Okay, this is how you would create smoke and fire and rain using the same effect or particle system called Particle Systems 2, or CC Particle Systems 2. This is the finished result here. So I'll just play the timeline. You can see that the fire starts up. You have some fairly realistic looking flames and smoke, and then the rain comes down and puts the fire out. Okay, so there's two very different looking particle systems here in the rain and the fire, and they're created using the same effect. So it just illustrates how flexible these things can be once you know how to play around with the various parameters. So I'm going to start a new composition here. That's fine. Zoom in a little bit. Okay, so the first thing you do when you're creating any particle system is to create a solid to receive the particle system. Doesn't matter what color it is, because as soon as you have dropped your particle system onto it, the solid disappears and you're just left with the particle system. Okay, so you'll be familiar with looking at Particle Systems 2 now. It's got this kind of sparkling spout type effect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this first of all into fire. Okay, so the fire is, I'll name this layer fire just so I know what I'm dealing with on the timeline. And I'll go up to I can change the parameters of the properties up here, or I can change them down here under the effects drop down. So this is when you want to do more time-based changes. You'll be working down here. You have a little bit more room to play with here, so if you just want to do a quick change on a property, you can do it up here. Right, so what I can do first of all is to go down to the particle. Now, actually no, I'm going to go to the physics. So the first thing I'm going to do is change it from explosive to fire. So it already has a type of, or a manner in which the particles leave the producer and the direction that they go and the speed that they go. So that's going to be the fire. So you see that they go upwards now, but they still don't look much like real fire. So I'll drag that down there. Now what I might do is go up to the producer and make it happen from a wider base. So it looks like a bonfire more than a match. Now the next thing I could change to make it look more like fire is the particle. The particle is currently set to a line. If I change that to faded sphere, it's going to look a little bit more like fire. Now, not a whole lot, because we need to change a good bit yet. Now, the birth rate might be the first thing that you look at to get it more dense. So more particles are born per frame and per second, and you get a much denser fire-like effect. So we're getting there now. The next thing is to change the size of the particles over the course of their life. These are starting off very small and getting very big. So I want to do it the other way around, where they start off the birth size being quite large, the death size being quite small, 0 even. Okay, so again this is looking a little bit more like fire. Another thing that I could change here is the composite mode. If I wanted to make it look brighter and a little bit more vivid, I could change it to add. And you'll see that you now get a very kind of a different look. You get much hotter at the base. You could change that then if you wanted to a much darker, deeper red, and play around with that to see what kind of a visual result you get. Sorry, it's the birth color I meant to change there into more of an orange. Now that's much hotter looking. Okay, now I need to make it so that it doesn't go all the way off the top of the screen, so I can do a few things here. I can change the gravity, I can change the resistance, and I can change the velocity. So in fact I'll most of the time be working with a combination of these. So by increasing the resistance, I'm increasing the air resistance to the fire, which makes it harder for that fire to move upwards. Now it's looking much more like fire. I can also change the gravity to get much the same effect. The direction I'm pretty much going to leave for the most part. Okay, so let's see if there's any other things that I need to change about this. The velocity, maybe I could increase that slightly to get those flames to kind of leap a little bit more. Now the size variation, we get some slightly more different sized particles. Sorry, actually need to increase that as opposed to decrease it. And give you bigger and smaller particles mixed together. Okay, now I'm reasonably happy with this at the moment. I'm going to make some bigger changes at the end by changing the size of the solid. Okay, now the next thing that I can do is to duplicate this, call this one smoke. Now I'm selecting the smoke layer, and what I have in the smoke layer, because I've duplicated a layer, is another version of the CC Particle Systems 2 that I can adapt without having to start from scratch to get smoke. Now I might go back into Fire for a moment and just increase the resistance. Now you'll see that because there's so much going on, it's actually taking a while to render. That's fine. So I go up to the smoke. Actually, first thing I'll do is drag smoke under fire because I want the smoke to be behind the fire. And I'll go first of all to the particle and change the birth color to a grey. Change the death color to a much darker grey. Now you can already see it there. Now I'm going to increase the birth size, but I'm also going to increase the death size. I'm going to change the transfer mode to composite. And now you can see the smoke coming up behind that fire there. Now the last thing I can do here is to go and play around with the actual size and scale of the fire by adjusting the size of the solid. I can do the same for the smoke, leaving it a little bit wider just so that the smoke can kind of come around the outside of the flames. Now I'll do a quick RAM preview. Just until the flames get up to a decent height. Okay, that's not looking too bad there now. Okay, if I wanted to enhance this further, I could go into the fire, go down to the birth rate, wait till the fire is up to a decent height there, and start keyframing the amount of particles that are born in on a particular frame, which should give me the visual result of flames kind of leaping off the fire itself. Okay, it's a little bit slow because there's a lot to render. Right, so that's the fire and the smoke. The next thing to do is the rain. I'm not going to use the same properties on my particle system for this because rain is quite different. So I'm going to create a new solid, call this one rain, click OK, drag over my particle systems 2. Now I'm going to need to make some different kinds of changes to this. So the first thing I'll do is go to the producer, reposition it at the top. It doesn't need to go all the way off the top just yet. Change the Y to 0 and the X to a good wide number so it goes right across the top of the composition. Now it's the physics that will make a lot of the difference here, together with a few changes to the particle. So I'll change the birth color to white, death color to blue, and now I'm going to be playing around with the birth rate, the physics. I'll be changing the velocity. Now the velocity will make them shoot out faster, but in lots of different directions. I'll switch off my fire for the moment. so it'll play back in real time. Now it's the gravity that's going to make the rain go straight down. So this is where gravity takes over, and then resistance will push those raindrops back up so I can see more of them on the screen at any given time. Now I've got a good rain going on there. I can pull the top of the particle system up here and maybe change the longevity so the rain doesn't just go straight off the bottom. It kind of fades out as it goes down. So that's a nice looking rain effect. Okay, now I've got the three working together there. What I want to happen is the rain will just start as the fire is in full flame. So I clip that in there a little bit, and actually don't need to do that. I'll open up the birth rate, keyframe that, keyframe it again here, then go back to my previous keyframe and set it to 0. So there are no particles being born. Then the particles start to come down. Now as they do, the first thing I need to happen is for the fire to go out. So I'll keyframe that birth rate there, and then take that all the way down to 0 at a later keyframe. Now you won't notice until a few frames afterwards, when the last of the particles die, that the fire has in fact been put out. The next thing to go then is the smoke. So I'll do the same for the smoke as I did for the fire. And you'll see as you move up then that the fire starts to slowly dissipate as well. Oops, didn't quite get all that, so I'll go again to 0. You see it just go up in a kind of a waft of smoke. Okay, so the finished result is pretty much what we see here. Now this looks a little bit more realistic because I spent more time keyframing the birth rate for the fire, and I pulled it down off the bottom of the screen so that you couldn't see the base of the flames. But other than that, it's pretty much the exact same process.